Welcome back. Today I'm going to try to learn how to play chess better by analyzing the game between two titled players. It's often recommended to beginners or intermediate players like myself to go through Grandmaster games or at least titled player games. You can see what they did and try to figure out why. I don't do it as often as I should. One reason I don't is because to me these games don't seem very accessible. You really have to look hard to find them, at least I do. But I did find a game that includes the French defense, which is what I've been playing with the black pieces, and this was between Carissa Yip and Hou Yifan. I'm probably pronouncing at least one of those names incorrectly, but Hou Yifan was for some time the highest rated female player in the world, and maybe still is, although I think she's not active right now. If I'm not mistaken, she works as a professor at a university, a major university, so she doesn't have a lot of time to play chess competitively anymore. Carissa Yip, on the other hand, is a high-rated American female player who, if I'm not mistaken, won the American Women's Chess Championship more than once. Anyway, in this game, Carissa Yip had the white pieces and Hou Yifan had the black pieces. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the moves by the black pieces because, again, I'm playing the French defense. I don't ever face the French defense as white because I don't play e4 as my first move with white. So that's why I flipped the board here. And I think there was a problem with the import. It shows Hou Yifan as rated 1708 and Carissa Yip as rated 2601. I'm pretty sure those ratings are the opposite of that. I actually found multiple games between these two women that played the French defense, but I wanted to look at the one where the person with the black pieces won the game, and that's this game. According to the graph down here, I did run the computer analysis. It looks like black got a lead fairly early in the middle game, but then gave it away with a blunder here just as they entered the end game and had to work pretty hard to get the lead back. So anyway, let's just go through these moves. I'm going to tell you at the point at which I don't recognize the position anymore. But for example, e4 and e6 that's the definition of the French defense. And I very often see d4 and then I play d5. Now here my opponents diverge greatly. I used to see mostly the advanced variation or the exchange variation, but lately I've been seeing a lot of either one of these two knights out. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the engine here. And it does look like Stockfish says a lot of those moves are just fine, all about the same rating here. Knight to c3 is actually slightly higher according to this version of Stockfish. e5 is there, taking is there. I think the one that I'm seeing the most often now is getting the knight out to f3. And now that I think about it, I might be mistaken. It might be here that I'm seeing knight to knight to f3. And then when I play this, they take and I take. And then they play d4 and I get this other knight out. And we have a basically a symmetrical position and it works out to the exchange variation, I think. But anyway, after this move here, according to the book here, knight to c3 is what most title players play according to the Lichess database, or knight to d2, which I guess does the same thing. From either one of those places, the knight would protect the e-pawn. In e5 is the next most common move among titled players. Well, here Carissa Yip pushed the pawn forward, which again I see somewhat frequently, and in that case, well, I was going to say the engine always recommends c5, but here it's saying bishop to d7 is just as good, or knight to e7. But anyway, all those are about fine. It looks like the vast majority of title players play c5. Okay, well that's what I've been playing, but that's because I thought that's what the engine recommended. And that is what Hou Yifan played here. Now here, I see variations. I see the bishop coming out to defend this pawn. I see the c-pawn coming up to defend the d-pawn. I see this knight out to f3, which, aims to defend the d-pawn. But it looks like, according to the engine, c3 is definitely better here. And again, that's what the vast majority of titled players have played in this position. And that is what Carissa Yip played. Okay. Now, because I'm not playing titled players, I'm not going to see much more after this, but I am pretty sure I have seen this exact position. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to play knight to c6. Yes, and again, we're in the majority of titled games here. This is what I have played at this point, and that's what Hou Yifan played. Knight to f3 is what's played here almost all the time at my level, as well as Grandmasters, Stockfish. We all agree on this. Okay, now here I think I've been messing up. Maybe, no, it's rated about the same. Okay, I've been playing queen to b6 here, and I don't remember if I learned that from looking at book moves or from Stockfish, but I thought it was the top Stockfish move. Now, of course, the idea is to help line up on that d-pawn, but also to point down here at the b-pawn. So if the opponent brings this bishop out to defend the d-pawn, then they're not defending the b-pawn anymore. I think I said that right. And I think that's the idea of the queen to b6 move. It does look like that's the second most common move here. Grandmasters, by a very slight edge, play bishop to d7 instead. But we're still in a position familiar to me because Hou Yifan played queen to b6 here. Now I do see all sorts of variations at this point. Sometimes I see this bishop come out to one of those two squares so that they can castle. Sometimes they go ahead and take this pawn at this point. Sometimes my opponents bring the bishop out to defend the d pawn. Sometimes they see that I'm attacking the b pawn if they move the bishop, so they move that pawn first. Stockfish gives a3 a slight edge over all of those, and that is the top move played by titled players. Interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a3 here, but that is what 70% of titled players play. The next move listed by Stockfish is bishop to e2, which is also the second move by grandmasters, and I have seen that one. What I don't think I've seen very often is what Carissa Yip played. I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen that. For me, the problem with this is that it keeps the queen from defending the d-pawn. So now I have more attackers on the d-pawn than they have defenders, except if I start taking here and they take and I take and they take. If I take with my queen, then they check and my queen's sitting there undefended. And I think I did that by accident when I first started playing the French defense. But you can go ahead and take this pawn. That is, in fact, the best move. It's what most grandmasters play, and it is what Hou Yifan played here. So you go ahead and take the pawn. They're going to take back. Oh, but they don't have to. Okay. I think here the vast majority of my opponents have taken back. But it looks like there's only two choices among titled players here. Either taking back with that pawn or castling. Or a3, Stockfish says, but titled players don't play a3 here. They either take back or castle according to this database. Okay, I don't think I've ever had an opponent castle in this position. I think I have been in this position and 100% of the people have taken this pawn here. But Carissa Yip castled, which is the other option that you see in titled players. So now I'm in an entirely new position. And I think if I had reached this position, I would just go ahead and take another pawn, but that's not recommended. Okay, why not? I wonder what the downside to that would be. Because it helps them get a piece out? I guess that's it. I guess that's the problem, is that it helps them get a piece out. So I don't take that pawn. I wait for them to take me. I'm trying to figure out why I would wait for them to take me. Although in this top line by Stockfish, it says they wouldn't take me. In the next line, it says that they would. But it does recommend a bishop to d7. I'm assuming that's to block a check from the bishop or the queen. I don't know. Probably not the bishop right now because my queen could take it. But yeah, that's what Stockfish is recommending. And again, the vast majority of titled players play bishop to d7 here. Is that what she played? Yes, she did. Okay. That makes sense, I guess, because you're going to want this knight available to hit either one of those two spots. And that knight won't be available if either the bishop or the queen are able to come over here to this diagonal, because then the knight would be pinned. So it makes sense to move the bishop there now. That's why I'm looking at the game, is so that I would find that. I need to remember that when this knight is here, even though I am aiming at the pawn, it is also blocking this diagonal and therefore can be pinned. I think that's it. I think that's the point of this move. And now we're down to just a couple of hundred games left in the database. That's one thing that's amazing to me, is on some of these openings, especially the older ones like the French defense, you go so far into the opening and there's still hundreds of games left. Now, in some of them, there's still thousands left at this point, but in the French defense at this point, looks like we got just over 300. All right, top move from Stockfish, top move in titled player database is rook to e1. That's what Carissa Yip played. So even though at this point in this game, I think she was probably about 20 years old, maybe 19, she's got this game memorized out to quite a ways. I know this is only 8 moves, which doesn't seem like a lot for grandmasters, but she wasn't a grandmaster. I don't think she still is a grandmaster, is she? I think Carissa Yip's like an international master, something like that. Maybe just a candidate's master. I don't know for sure. But to have that memorized out to 8 moves is pretty good. Okay, now here we see a couple of different choices. Knight g to e7, which is probably what I would play here, if not taking the pawn. Or rook to c8, okay. I guess that's because you're expecting the c-file to become open at some point once those pawns get exchanged. Also, my end of the c-file is open. So I guess that's what rook to c8 is about. Knight g to e7 is the top move played in the database. That is what Hou Yifan played. Okay. The reason that I might have played that is because I have learned in the French defense that you want this knight to either be able to get to that pawn, like going over here to g6, or depending on, if they get that other bishop out, you want to have that knight up here on f5. And also that helps protect your d-pawn. So those are the two spots I'm aiming for. It is kind of a slow way to get it out, but you can't get it out the fast way because of where their e-pawn is. So I do understand that. I've played this a few times, obviously not in this exact position. And the next move really surprises me. It's one of Stockfish's top 2 moves, and it is the move most played by titled players in this position, and that is h4. It doesn't surprise me because I haven't seen h4 before. We've seen that in, Grandmaster games, but I didn't know it was a part of this opening. And none of my opponents have known that. Maybe it's not a part of this opening unless you follow this exact line. As the player with the white pieces here, I wouldn't play it because don't you need your pawns there? But that's one of the top moves, and it's the most common move to see in this position. Do we need to meet it with h6 like she did here? It's not the most common move. It's the second most common move, but a6 is often played here. And a6 is listed. Rook to c8 again, or h6. Well, Hou Yifan played h6, one of the top moves. And I'm trying to figure out why this is. I'm not trying to figure out why they played h4. I'm trying to figure out why I would play h6, because I don't need to stop that pawn yet. But I'm guessing one of the reasons they play this is to anchor in a piece over here, and I'm preventing that by playing h6. Or am I worried about g5? Is that why I'm pushing one of these pawns forward now? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Well, let's go back. And what if I had played a6? Then what would I expect them to do? If I was playing a grandmaster, I would expect them to play h5 now. And if they did play h5, then I would want to play g6 or h6, either one. Well, I would play h6 here, not g6. Well, Stockfish is recommending h6 twice on 2 different lines, so I guess that adds up to as strong as the other one, g6. I don't know how Stockfish is imagining those two being different, but that didn't happen. I just went on a little tangent there to see what would have happened. Okay, but so after that, h6, I'm still not sure if it's to prevent this or if it's to prevent the g-pawn from coming. I'm just not sure. But that's what she played. Okay, I will try to keep that in mind. I usually don't play that until a bishop or knight comes over there, but I guess you can play it before that. White has a bunch of different moves here. It looks like the few titled players that are left, most of them play h5. Okay, so we would have ended up in that position anyway. I'm wondering why it's such a good move for white to do that if I can so easily stop it and we're still dead even. But maybe that's the thing that keeps them even. Now here you could expect a grandmaster to play rook to c8 or a6, or finally take that c-pawn up there that's been waiting, or knight to c8. Stockfish would play rook to c8 here, or a6, or g5. Really? Yep, Stockfish would just say g5 would be fine. Okay. All right, well, rook to c8 though. But Hou Yifan played knight to c8, which is interesting. And now this database says that there's only one game left that has ever reached this position, and it's not the one that I'm looking at. That's interesting. I'm going to close that book. I got this game from somewhere else, from another site that definitely said it was Carissa Yip and Hou Yifan, and I imported it here, but it's not in the Lichess database yet. I don't know how often they update that. This game is supposedly from 2022. Interestingly, Carissa Yip played what it shows that the other game here played between 2 people that I've never heard of, was knight b to d2. So she must have studied something up to this point, because when she played that, it's counted as inaccurate and goes back to even, but she was following a previously existing game. And the next move is to take this pawn. That's also from that game. And that is what Hou Yifan played. Well, I said earlier that I might do that at some point. Now here, I think I understand it, because that knight's not guarding the pawn anymore. Right? Earlier I said maybe the reason not to take that was because it would help get the knight out. But now the knight's out, and now they have to take back with the b-pawn, and then that b-pawn is separated from its other pawns. So they have, gaps there, which I think is good. That I might have found out if I hadn't tried to take that pawn earlier. So they are following this game between these other 2 men here, when Carissa Yip took that, and then here Hou Yifan finally diverges from that game. Queen to c7 is the top move recommended by Stockfish, and it's the move that was played in that other game. But here she played bishop to c5, which is here. It was counted as inaccurate, but that number says +1. I think that's a mistake to go from 0 to +1. But the engine says queen to c7. I'm thinking that's to aim another piece at this pawn, but I don't know, because it seems really well defended right now. And because we put this knight down here, instead of leaving it over here, it can't get to that. Oh, it couldn't get to that pawn anyway because of their h-pawn. Maybe that's what that h-pawn push was about, is to keep my knight from going to g6. But maybe that's what queen 7 is about, or maybe it's to keep the queen out of the line of that rook. Knight to a5 is another possibility, not sure where it's headed, or bishop to e7. I think I might find bishop to e7 here because it would prepare me to castle. And maybe that's what Hou Yifan was thinking, is she wants to castle, but she needs to get this bishop out first. So she put it over here, and it's not +1. Now that Stockfish has run a little bit, 0.7. I mean, this makes sense, I guess. We're lining up there. Is there not a good way to block it? Queen to e2 is the best defense here, according to the engine. And I don't know how long Carissa Yip spent on this, but she played that. It might have still been in her prep. I don't know. I didn't get timestamps with this PGN file, just the moves. And now Hou Yifan plays queen to e7, and it is one of her top 3 moves. Queen to c7, sorry. So she gave up on this idea, but she wanted this bishop here. I'm thinking now she knows why she should play this. I still am not entirely sure, but I'm thinking it might be to move the bishop back at some point, and also to keep the queen out of the rook's line of fire. But the best move was a6, which I guess also gives the queen a way out. Or again, knight to a5, still not sure where it's going, but queen to c7 is up there. Okay. So now at this point, I am guessing why they are trying to do stuff. But that's the point of looking through these games, is for people like me to see a move that I normally wouldn't have made. And I don't know if I would have made that move or not. I might have waited until they moved the rook over. But now I do have 2 pieces aimed at this pawn. However, my opponent has a bunch of pieces, 3 pieces aimed at that pawn. So I'm definitely not ready to take it, and that's definitely not why we put the queen here. Again, Carissa Yip might still be in prep. She played the absolute top move here, which is knight to b3. I don't know that I would have found that either, or expected it, but that one makes sense because I've just moved the queen so the bishop's undefended. So I don't know. She might not have been in prep. That might have been an easy move to find. Now you have to move the bishop. Do you bring it back to where Stockfish said to put it in the first place? Yes, that's... Whoop, no, it changed its mind. Stockfish says defend it with the b pawn. All right? You don't need that bishop. That's interesting. Because by all the definitions I've seen, that's your bad bishop, right? I mean, that's your good bishop. It's the one that goes between these pawns. We've got all these pawns on light squares, and this is the good bishop. Stockfish says just to defend it, so if they do take it, then you get another pawn aimed at a center square. Maybe the pawns are more important here. Okay, well, again, that surprises me. I would have thought that this over here is my bad bishop, my light squared bishop, because it really can't go anywhere. But the second best move is to bring this back where Stockfish wanted her to put it in the first place. Now, white does have a very mild advantage here, and it gets slightly bigger when Hou Yifan plays this, but only if you jump in here with this other knight. That's 0.7 if white will bring this knight in here to d4, which I guess is just an effort to continue moving forward. And then it says black would castle at that point, because, I mean, if you took, I think that's obvious, then they get another center pawn, and then the middle's locked up. Maybe castling makes sense. I don't know. Bishop to f4 is another move possible here, and that may be because you don't want to keep all your pieces guarding your e-pawn. Or a4. I think I have opponents who might play a4 here. And I understand that, you know, bishop to f4 too, because you haven't developed one of your pieces yet. I get that. But Carissa Yip played c4 according to this move list, and it's the first move of the game that's counted as a mistake. And it took her from having a very slight advantage to, you know, right at 0 on the eval bar, according to Stockfish. If you take it, well, I think I would take it here, because I don't know what else to... If you don't take it, it keeps coming. Or I guess takes you. Yeah, Stockfish says to take it, or play knight to b6, which is over here. Wait, what? Why would you play knight? I don't understand why you would play knight to b6, and Stockfish didn't tell us. That line is empty. It just says that one's probably pretty good, but don't know why. Let's see if we... Yeah, you can't expand that line because there's no other moves listed. Well, that's really weird, Stockfish. Okay, yeah, I think I would take it. Or move forward. I mean, I might do that, even though that's probably bad because they have 2 pieces attacking that square. Okay, so hopefully I would see that and I would just take the pawn. But Hou Yifan is a grandmaster, rated higher than I'll ever be rated, and played knight to b6, apparently welcoming the capture of her d-pawn. That's the only reason you would play knight to b6 instead of taking the pawn, right? Is because you want them to take so you can have a knight in the center. I guess that makes sense. So Yip took here, as she was expected to, and I think you have to take back with the knight, so Hou Yifan did. And we talked about that bishop being the only piece that hasn't been developed yet, and Stockfish says, go ahead and move it up here to b2 now. And white found it. Oh my goodness. I don't know where you would put it other than that, but I mean, because now you've got a knight guarding those 2 squares and a pawn guarding that square. If you go here, it's just pointed at your own pawn, so I guess by, you know, process of elimination, you would pick d2, I guess, if you knew you had to get that piece out now. Maybe she likes where the rest of her pieces are and says, hey, let's connect the rooks at long last. But yeah, she made the absolute best engine move here. Now, what do I play? I haven't looked at the move list yet, but I don't know what to play here. Do I finally castle? One way or the other? I can castle either way. I'm not sure. I think I would castle. What does it say? Knight b to d4. Oh, wow. Knight d to b4. I don't know that I would have found that. I like the knight kind of where it is. It's guarding that square, so their bishop can't go there. I've got knights guarding all these squares. Look at that. Like, right? And the knight's, you know, guarding these squares. One knight or the other is guarding so many squares on this board. Yeah, I kind of like having those 2 knights guarding all those squares. But it says to move it to knight b to d4, which I understand that you're safe there for a second. You've got a bishop, you've got a knight guarding that. But what if they just push the a-pawn? Oh, I guess you're aiming at that bishop maybe. You're asking them to move that bishop, and it says that they would. It says that they would put it on e4, and then you would finally bring this rook over. Did she play that? No. Okay, the second best move is bishop to a3, which is way over there. Okay, I wouldn't have found that. I don't know what that does. Are you trying to sneak around? No, it says they would just go ahead and move that rook right now. It doesn't make any difference. So you put that bishop over there for nothing. Okay, why is that the second best move then? Or queen to d8. Time to bring the queen home. But Hou Yifan castled, and that's what I said that I might do, so I don't feel so bad. Someone is rated 2600, made the same inaccuracy that I probably would have played in that position. And now Carissa Yip has, again, almost a +1 advantage, but she needs to go to this open file, face down the queen, or just take this pawn. Wow, that's the second best move. Okay, or bring the rook all the way over to the d file, which is also completely devoid of pawns, so that makes sense. I get it. What did she play? She played queen to e4, her first mistake of the game, or is that the second? That was her second mistake of the game. Okay, now what was she aiming at by bringing it up here? Was she looking at this? Okay, see, that's something that I might expect one of my opponents to play, hoping I didn't notice it because it's checkmate. So now you have to do something to stop checkmate. There's only one move, and yeah, it's not g6 because there are pawns there. It has to be f5. Wouldn't they en passant it? And if they did, then what do you do? Okay, I think I can see why she played this. It seems pretty dangerous. Because would I find that? And if I did, I would expect them to take it. And then I would want to take with the knight, which attacks the queen, but then they check me and I have to get out here and then they checkmate me. I mean, that's what would happen if I did it. Once I started looking at this, if I spent any amount of time on it, which I assume this was a classical time control, that's what I would think would happen. Oh my. Okay, but Hou Yifan found it. And the only move that keeps it close to even is taking with en passant, right? Hou Yifan has an only move here, and that's to take with the knight. But then how do you stop checkmate? Oh no, they can't check you because the knight's there. Okay, I got it. Sorry, wow, why was I missing that? Because the knight's going to be on f6. I was missing that because the knight's way over here in the d file. But after it takes, it's going to be on f6, and it's guarding this, so they can't check me with the queen. She has to make a queen move here according to Stockfish. It needs to be queen to h4, or queen to c4, or queen to c4. Can I just take off that third line? That's happened too many times. Let's just tell it to give us 2 lines, because the third line is very often the same as the second one. Yeah, if you don't like c4, go to c4. But anyway, h4 or c4. And Carissa Yip blundered. I don't know if she was in time pressure. I don't know if she got frustrated by, losing her checkmate. Also, probably a big case of nerves playing against the highest rated woman in the world. Like, I might blunder mate on move 1. I don't know, because you get nervous playing somebody that you know is that much better than you. Somebody who has won the Women's World Championship. Maybe that's what it was. She goes in here, and that's a blunder. And there's an only move here. It's the same move that I would have played. I was just about to say, can't you just hit it with this bishop? And that's the only move, and that's what Hou Yifan played. So now the queen has to run away again. It goes straight back, but maybe that's what Carissa Yip wanted. Maybe that's why she went in there, was so she could get back to g3. But g3 offers the queen trade, and the only move is to take it. And when you take it, that messes up the pawn structure, and apparently that's enough. Hou Yifan is now up a pawn, has doubled the pawns in front of the white king, has a really, looks like solid defense set up down here. Only problem I see is that this pawn isn't defended. Is she supposed to defend it now? No, she's supposed to play bishop to d6. Oh, that way if you take my pawn, I take yours kind of thing. Or bishop to f7, which is here, which defends that pawn. Okay, those are her 2 top moves. She said, forget that mess, I'm taking a free pawn now. And she's still ahead. Okay, so that one wasn't bad. We don't know, obviously, whether Carissa Yip realized she was down -2 on the evaluation, but she did what most of us would probably do, which is take that pawn. That part I don't need to, figure out. It looks relatively obvious. But now we get another one, right? Is that a good move? It is, but it's not the best move. It's pretty close to the best move. But the absolute best move is to attack the rook first. And she has to go all the way back, so she does. Now you take that g-pawn. Then she goes back, now you take the pawn. Well, I had to wait a while all those moves flipped and flopped. Knight to d4 or bishop to b5. Okay, we're threatening to separate those pawns. So Carissa Yip played bishop to e4, which is counted as a blunder because doesn't it just hang a piece? No, it's offering a trade. Wait, why is that a mistake? And it takes us to -4. Wait, that's not a mistake. That's a blunder, right? -2 to -4? 2.6 to 4.3. I think that's a blunder. Is she nervous about this knight being, so close to the king and guarding so many squares around the king? And she would rather have that knight out of there at the cost of a bishop? Not just the cost of a bishop versus a knight, but the cost of the bishop pair, which Hou Yifan still has. Maybe that's why that's a mistake, and it's only a mistake if she takes it. She did. I think I would have taken there, just because we've been told so many times the bishop pair, bishop's better than knights in an open endgame. This endgame's going to be really open. Look at all these pawns are gone, and all these pawns are gone. That's a ton of pawns that are missing. So bishops should be better than knights in this one. Obviously, she has to take back, although it's not much worse to not take back. That's crazy. Maybe not crazy, but it's surprising that it's almost as good. Okay, but she took the knight. It says bishop to d5 is best. Okay, I get that. Aims at the rook. When the rook moves, take there maybe? No, probably not. Okay, so you just want to put it there. And then the rook's going to drop back to defend the knight. I guess it's not only aiming at the rook and the knight, but it's also aiming at the pawn in front of the king. Wait, it's aiming 2 pieces at the knight. Maybe that's what part of it is. I'm trying to figure out what I would have played here. It's probably not that. My bishop is currently defended, but I think I would be tempted to move it. I'm just not sure where. But yeah, I don't know if I would have found that or not. Hou Yifan did find it. Best move. She's up -4. But remember what I said at the beginning. Even though she had this big advantage here. Wait, this game's a lot longer than I thought it was. She had this advantage here, but she gave it away. Can we just go ahead and skip to that point? I'm going to go because I don't have enough time to do this whole thing. Wow. Okay, so they traded off some bishops here. Now that the bishop pair thing that I talked about earlier doesn't matter, and apparently that was okay. It's still -3. It is Hou Yifan's turn, and she blundered here. What would I have played? I would have taken the rook with the knight. Oh, I don't know. Look where their knight is. Oh, I would have made the top move. Oh, I feel so good about that, but I feel bad for Hou Yifan, who took with her rook to say because she thought she was going to lose it anyway, but no. Oh my. Yeah, see, I think I would have taken with the knight, and then I assume they would have taken my rook, and I would have taken back. It says no. Wait, why wouldn't they have taken my rook here? Oh, because I'm aiming at their rook. Oh, I didn't even realize that. I just thought that they would take my rook and I would take here and, oh, that would have been bad for me. Oh, okay. I would have made the best move on that previous turn right here, but I would have made it for the wrong reasons and it might have worked out for me on accident. She made the second best move, which is a blunder because of the check. And there's no point in bringing your rook back because their knight is guarding that square and she could take it anyway. So you just get out of check so that their rook has to move again, but then we save our rook and go after that pawn. Okay, so black still has a very slight advantage, but it is no longer a raging advantage like it was. And as I said back here, I would have made the right move, but for the wrong reasons, and I wouldn't have realized all the ramifications. And that happens sometimes. Sometimes we get lucky and we make the only move without realizing that it was an only move. So again, don't know if it was time pressure, but that's where the game went back to nearly even, and we got this position. And then it didn't stay even for long. We're still even here, but Carissa Yip blunders here. Let's see, it's white to play. The knight has just been challenged. Where do you put it? I think I might go here to protect it by the king, or there to attack the rook. No, neither one of those is best. Although, the second one that I said is not that bad, but the first one that I said is what she played, and it's knight to e4 was counted as inaccurate. Oh, wow. It got worse and worse very slowly. But then there were 2 big blunders here. Okay. Again, I only have so much time, but I am trying to learn. Why was that worse? See, I would have played probably this in it, but I said I might have played that too. But rook to d7 was the best move. But wait. And it says the king would run away, but why wouldn't the king come closer? Oh, because if the king came closer, you'd get a pawn, but then I would get their knight. I don't know, but for some reason this is bad. Now it doesn't matter if we play a5, king to e6. Probably there's some others there. And Hou Yifan played a5. Okay. I'm going to skip up to the point of her blunder here, which is after this. She actually has a -2 or so lead, and her best move is to go back or toward the rook. But she went forward, and that was a blunder that brought it back to even. I wonder if she knew that she had the advantage here. I mean, Grandmaster, maybe she did. I wouldn't have known that I had the advantage here with black. I am down a piece, but I'm up 4 pawns. So yeah, I'm slightly up on material, but a knight's, that can get pretty nasty sometimes. Also, I don't know which way I would have gone either. I don't think I would have gone that way because I would want to stay here and protect this pawn. And maybe that's why those are the 2 best moves, is to stay here and protect, your g-pawn. But she went up here, and now it's even because of the check. But yeah, there's a check here, and then you go toward it, and then you have the knight to f5 check, which wins this pawn. Yeah, because you'd have to go toward it. If she had checked on knight to g3, you only have the 1 legal move. And then she checks here and wins the pawn. Oh my. Okay, so when Hou Yifan went here, Carissa Yip had a way to knock off that pawn down there on g7, but she missed it. And she missed her second best move, which is rook to d1. I'm not sure why that's the second best move. She played rook to d2. I don't know, was she thinking of coming around over here or thinking about stopping this a pawn? We're about to find out. G5 is the best move here, but Hou Yifan missed it. Brought the king back. Maybe she was worried about being checked over here. So she got out of the way, and now maybe realizing she should have hid here in the first place. Carissa Yip's best move is rook to d3, but she played the second best one, rook to d6, and black is still ahead. Okay, sorry, that one's pretty significant. When Hou Yifan blundered, I think a lot of people at my level would have found this. I have a lot of people around my level that would have found this, knowing that I had to move up and then come down here and win this pawn. So that one kind of surprised me. But let's go on to the point of the next blunder, which is way over here, where it's now minus 3.6. That knight is still out there, but we've managed to get this pawn all the way down there. They just blocked it, and we have to check. Or h5. There might be other moves that keep us ahead, but not g5. g5 is the wrong move. Why? Oh, I thought it took us back to even, but it didn't. It's the wrong move because of knight to f5. It says we would go forward and they would take this pawn, but what if we didn't go forward? What if we came back? Sorry, why is that so great? Yeah, I would just go back, and then they would check me, and then I would come down here. Oh, they would get that pawn anyway. Oh my. Okay, well, I would have messed that up, huh? So that's the blunder because of this, because no matter what we do now, white's going to get that pawn. That's about the same as that last blunder. So Hou Yifan was not being careful about where the knight could go, and Carissa Yip missed it both times. That's really interesting. I wonder if after this, I'm certainly after this, her coach, both of their coaches worked with them, say, hey, you got to look at your checks. You got to figure out you're going to win this pawn because this rook can come over here. But maybe you're worried that if that rook comes over here, then this promotes. So I don't know. Anyway, the other one I definitely, people at my level would have found. This one I'm not sure because I can understand being worried about that a pawn. Okay, but she messed up coming for the pawn this way, which allows several different things. Rook to a4. I'm not quite sure of the significance of rook to a4, but also rook to a5 check is the top move, and that's what Hou Yifan played. But doesn't that help them go for your pawn? That's not the top move, but that's what Carissa Yip played. That's what I would have expected. Why not go for this pawn? But now it's over because of b5 or g4, either one. Oh, maybe that's why that was bad, because now the king's not in front of this pawn anymore. Or this one, b5 or g4. Yeah, g4 is where Hou Yifan went to. Okay, now there's two moves that Stockfish was having trouble deciding between. That turned out to be the top one. Okay, so she is going to get this pawn, but it's different than the way she would have got it before. Now this one's advanced. Only one move here, and it is moving the king forward, which she did, and now you're not supposed to take the pawn. It's too late. It's too late no matter what you do, but she took the pawn, which made it even too later, if that makes sense. G3 is one of the top moves. Hou Yifan is going for it. There's not much that can go on here. Checking with the rook is good, or king to f6 is good. I don't know anyone that would play king to f6 here, and certainly Carissa Yip didn't understand why. She brought this knight, which wasn't one of the best moves. It's -9 now if we push this pawn forward again. Of course, Hou Yifan did that. You have to be careful, of course. There is still a rook here. You don't want to get trapped behind your own pawn and somehow checkmated, if the king gets up here. But the king can't get up there because of this rook. Oh, interestingly, Stockfish says to play knight to d4, but Carissa Yip played what I said, which is going to knight to e3. And now you need to push this pawn. Hou Yifan promoted here. Why would you promote? You promote with check, which basically just demands that they take with the rook. I mean, you're still ahead, but I'm curious. I wonder what her thinking was. Maybe she was tired and wanted to get it over with. And this was the fastest way she could think of, because once the rook comes over, then I promote here, and they have to take and lose the rook. Now she's confident after that exchange that the rook is going to beat that knight, maybe with the help of this pawn. How many more moves do we have to go? She did not need the help of that pawn, apparently. Let's see how this went. She was ahead the whole rest of the way, and I'm out of time. So the king's coming over here. The pawn starts advancing. That was inaccurate for some reason. The pawn's advancing. We're at -35. King's still coming. The rook cuts the king off, which she had to have figured that she could do. And, of course, if you come closer, the rook comes all the way down here, and you're never going to get to that pawn. You can bring the knight. You can bring the king. The rook's just going to run away. Stockfish actually says rook to c6 or c5, but why wouldn't you go all the way away? I agree with Hou Yifan here. That's what I would have done. And now the king can't get closer, but the knight can. The knight can get a little closer, so she brought the knight closer. The knight's now guarding this square. Hou Yifan pushes it one more time. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You can't get in front of it, right? Surely not. You get in front of it, you get hit with this check and lose the knight too, so you just wander your king around, but the other king's coming closer, and then you're going to run out of places to go. She did put the knight in front of it because now you don't have this check anymore, so you keep bringing your king. Come here. What is she waiting on? Knight hops back in there. The king's trying to come around to keep the knight from getting in front of it again. Wait, should she have tried to block her? After this. No, it's knight to b2 is one of the better moves, or knight to c3 even. What about this? Would that have hurt anything? Says we just would have shuffled a little bit and black is still winning. But if you go back and forth too many times, you're not winning. But anyway, this is what happened. She was able to bring the king and the rook around, and yeah, the king's just going to go that way. Yeah, you're going to be able to shepherd this pawn in there or get rid of the knight, one of the two things. Well, I definitely understand the ending part, and I'm pretty sure I understand those two late blunders there. Yeah, this one where she went that way because you're going to lose the G pawn, and the other one where you're going to lose the H pawn when she played this. Yeah, I understand both of those, and in both, especially the first one, I'm surprised that Carissa Yip missed them. But anyway, that must have been an exhausting game. I know these games sometimes go on for hours, but that was, 80 moves, and I just spent an hour looking superficially at some of the moves. And imagine, sifting through all the possibilities, sitting in that chair with the other person just across from you, especially from Carissa Yip's perspective, playing against former world champion. Good for both of them. Hopefully you got something out of this. Also, I would appreciate it if you would let me know what you look for when you go through a Grandmaster game or a titled player game, expert game. What kinds of things do you look for? What moves do you skip to? Do you just focus on openings, or do you just focus on end games? I appreciate, any of those perspectives. I'll see you next time. Today I'm going to try to learn something about how to Carissa Yip, on the other hand, is a high-rated American player who's from But I wanted to look at the one where now I do see all sorts of, now I think so Carissa Yip